So I have been working on a sermon today that I started. This one I've started about 2 months ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. And I always knew I would be delivering this someday, just didn't know when. So today is the day. I hope it's ready. So it's a confidence booster, right? So here's what's happened in my life. Many of you, if you've been here at all over the last 7 months, 7 months ago, I was listening to YouTube to a theologian named Dallas Willard. And Dallas was talking about how to love the Lord your God, which is what Jesus said it's all about. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. And he had these circles up here that just blew me away. And he said, listen, Jesus wasn't just pulling body parts out. He was saying, this is who you are. You have all your heart. In the Bible, heart and will and spirit are the same. So we tend to think of heart as emotions. Heart aren't emotions in the Bible. That's an American thing. So your emotions come from your mind, where your thoughts create your feelings. And then you've got your body. That's your physical body right here. And then you have your neighbors, yourself, your social relationships, and your soul captures all of this together. So I was blown away by what I learned that day in that video. I'd never heard anyone explain it this way. It's like, oh my goodness, this is who you are. And if you want to do what Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbors as yourself, then you better know what these are, because how can you love God with these parts of who you are if you don't even understand them? So that began a journey 7 months ago of learning to understand what the Bible says about these critical pieces of who I am and talking about this. I did a series back in March called Come Alive. It was based on those 5 things. I consider it to be the most important thing I've ever done with what I've learned in my, 4 decades of teaching. No, a lot of years. I don't know how many years. But then he blew my mind further when he talked about the opportunity that you and I have to live with Jesus here and now in the kingdom of God here on earth. Because I was raised in a church tradition where all we talked about was when you die someday, you get to go to heaven. And yet, he pointed out over and over again, read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Jesus talked constantly about living in the kingdom of heaven now, not when you die. You can have that experience with God now. And I was so blown away by it. And he said the problem is that you have these 2 competing wills on earth. You've got my will and God's will. And so the way I described it was this: my will keeps me living in my kingdom on earth. My kingdom is a kingdom marked by failure and addiction and defeat and impatience and fear and worry and limited power, because I can't control very much. I asked you a question recently. I said, how much of what happens in this world today is actually under your control? And we all kind of laugh at that, because not very much. Our kingdom is really incredibly small, and yet we live there because we want what we want. And he pointed out that what Jesus talked about all the time is that you can live in the kingdom of God now. And life in the kingdom with the king doesn't just happen when you die someday, which was my huge mistake. You can live with this kingdom now where you experience the qualities that Jesus said we can have, like joy and power and love and freedom and true life, and his character inside of me, and the supernatural activity of God. So for many of you, just like me, the last 7 months were like, whoa, that's not what I thought Christianity was about. I thought Christianity was about fire insurance. I take Jesus into my life so that when I die someday, I can go to heaven, rather than it being about, no, you can have life with the King now. That changes everything. So this began this journey, but I always knew, but early on, as I started reading and learning about all of this, I came across a word that really, really rattled me in all of this. Surrender is the key, right? Surrender is where this happens, where you move from your kingdom into his, but there's a word beyond surrender that we've talked about, and I always knew I'd be doing this message because it's this word. It's the word abandonment. Abandonment is choosing to trust God with how things turn out, where I stop trying to push, manipulate, or force results because I'm confident God's plan and timing are better than mine. And the moment I heard this months ago, and the moment I started to understand it, I knew that my core spiritual problem had just been identified right there. That is my core spiritual problem. The reason why I can't tell you more cool activity of God stories in my life, because the truth is, I'm a fixer. Problems come up, I solve the problem. I'll do whatever it takes to solve the problem. I'm an activist, I'm forward motion, and I try to make the outcomes I want happen, rather than abandoning the situation to the activity of God. So this question started haunting me. What if I could learn to abandon my problems into the hands of a God who is all-powerful, all-wise, and actually loves me, and watch as he works on them? That's what grace is, by the way, that last sentence. Grace is God doing in your life what you cannot do for yourself. What if that was your constant, regular experience? Every week, you saw activity of God. God doing things in your life that you could never do on your own. Would that be something that you'd be interested in? Because it just drives me now. The problem is getting to that word right there, abandon. That is an incredibly challenging thing. So this is what I've been working on in my own life for months. So here's what we're going to do today. So we're in this series called Everyday Disciple. And I want to talk about how to get God's help with your toughest problems. And I want to ask you to open your program, take out the notes. There are 2 pages of notes today. I do want to ask you to grab them both, but you're only going to need the one that you have to fill in the blanks with. For those of you who are watching online, both of these pages are available at our website, pendulechurchlife.com. So I hope you go and get them. So there are going to be some things that I want you to look at with me as we go through this. And some of you are like, are you kidding me, Brian? 7 points? You can't get through 3. So we are getting through all 7, I promise. And we're going to be done on time. How about that for a promise? All right, here we go. So step 1, you got to identify the situations where you need God. So I literally have this in my notebook where I pray in the morning, where I keep my things I pray. And I when I'm struggling with something, I go right through these 7 steps. So identify the situations where you need God's help. So this is easy. This is really literally paying attention to things like this. How many of you today, and don't answer out loud, just think in your own mind, how many of you are frustrated about a situation in your life? How many of you are angry about something that's happened to you recently? How many of you are upset or scared about something that's looming in the future? How many of you feel a little bit defeated about something, a habit you can't break? Or a good habit you can't start? How many of you feel confused about what's happening in life or what somebody did to you? Or how many feel concerned or worried or anxious? This is the key. It's your incredible gift of emotions that God gave you, because your emotions are the sign from God that he wants you to turn to him. So the reality is, you look at what Jesus said. Jesus said, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. You can't do the casting until you're aware that you're feeling, right? I can't cast anxiety on God if I'm not even paying attention to how I'm feeling. So I can't do this. And if you're like me, emotions confuse me. I struggle with emotions. I'm not good at identifying my emotions when they're happening to me, so I'm slower on this. But you can't cast anxiety on God if you won't admit that you feel anxious. So here's what I want to ask you to do as we get started today. Flip your notes over on the back, and at the top it says, one thing I'm struggling with today. Can you try and put one thing that fits one of these words, or maybe a variation of this word, in that box? Hopefully it isn't too hard for you. Actually, I hope it's really hard. I hope you're all doing so well today that you can't think of anything that's got you frustrated or concerned. But the reality is, if you are in a relationship, if you have to deal with money, if you have a boss or coworkers or a job, then probably you have something to pick from. But this will really be helpful if you think about the one thing. You can put more than one in there, but at least have one. Now, the second thing you do is name your desire. You've got to identify what it is that you desire. So this is the question you're asking, and it's right there on your notes. What do I want most in this situation? What do I want most in this situation? So you got to identify your desire. Now, this may sound easy, but it isn't always easy, and it's not always pleasant to look at, right? Because sometimes when you sit down and you do this, what you desire is pretty selfish. It's really just about you. Sometimes it's really painful. because you may think it's never going to happen, or sometimes it reveals a hidden desire inside of you. I want to control this. I want their approval. I want their security. I want, and it doesn't always feel good to name it. Or sometimes it feels incredibly vulnerable to name what you want. There was a woman I read who said, I don't pray for what I really want because what if God says no? And that just feels too vulnerable. So there can be all kinds of things that really impact our willingness to identify, to name our desire. But here's why this is critical. Remember what I said, that how many wills are there in play? In my life, there are two wills, the will of God and my will. What I'm doing by naming my desire is seeing where my will is still attached to an outcome. So that's critical for what you're going to do next. But I wanted to give you an example of this. As I was writing this message, and like I said, I've been working with this for about 2 months, just created it from what I've been learning. I thought of an example that is one of my least favorite examples to talk about, but it'll help you understand this. Years ago, I worked for a woman that when I first started working for her, I loved working with her. Super smart, very intelligent, very creative, really experienced, just wonderful boss. And then things changed. And never understood why they changed, certainly told stories why they changed, but the real trigger that created the frustration was she made me some promises. She made me 4 specific promises about things that she was going to do for me in my career, and it had a specific time attached to it, and it was going to happen, and weeks turned into months and nothing happened, and I kept asking her, and she kept assuring me, oh yeah, it's going to be fine, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And then 2 months later, turns out it wasn't going to happen. And she had done the exact opposite of everything she had just told me, and she had never told me. So, anyone have a boss lie to them? And how did you trust them after that, right? What happened to the relationship when somebody lies to you? I was so frustrated. Okay, remember what I said? There are these steps that we follow. So I was feeling something. A lot of emotion, anger, frustration, confusion. I felt betrayed. So remember, that's step 1. You name, oh, okay, this is an opportunity to turn to God. And I wish I would have known this back then, but then you have to identify your desire. You know what I wanted? I wanted her to keep her word. Now, that's a good desire, right? There's nothing wrong with that desire. Many of the times you'll put it down, there's nothing wrong. I wanted to be able to trust her. I wanted to move forward in my career, and now this whole thing was blocking it. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. Flip your notes over back on the back. I put another section. What do I really want? So look at what you put in that first box. What's one area where you're struggling, frustrated, confused, upset, and then think about what do you really want? Now, maybe that's easy, maybe that's hard, but you have to do that because step 3 won't make sense. And I'm gonna give you step 3. Please let me explain it before you just react to it. And I didn't write this, okay? Step 3, die to the outcome. Die to the outcome. So that doesn't sound very good to say. I remember the first time I heard this idea of letting go of outcomes into the hands of God, I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense to me. But I was listening to a podcast where somebody was talking about this even more, and they said this sentence, and I was so stunned by it. I was in the car. I literally just kept hitting rewind on that podcast over and over. I probably listened to this sentence 30 times to try and get it in my head, because that's how bad I am at it. I die to the desire to get what I want when I want it. That's what this requires. If you want abandonment, where you can really fully experience God's character and power, then this is what you have to work on. You have to die to the desire to get what you want when you want it. Now, in the grand scheme of things, when I honestly evaluate myself, if you were giving like a rating from 1 to 100 on how good you do at this, 100 being like the best, 1 being the worst, I don't think I'm making it out of single digits. I don't think I'm out of single digits. I think I am so bad at dying to the desire to get what I want. I want what I want. And I drive to get what I want. And the idea of dying to what I want, super hard for me. But here's why this is so important. Remember what I said? Two wills at play. So unless I release my demands for what I want in every situation, then I cannot say that I'm devoted to the will of God. Whose will am I devoted to? My will. And Jesus isn't your king if you're devoted to your will. And if Jesus isn't your king, guess whose kingdom you're living in? So all the incredible things that Jesus promised get neutralized if you won't do this. Super hard, but so important. It literally is how Jesus lived his life. Remember what happened when Jesus was going to the cross? The night before the cross, he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, right after the Passover celebration where he instituted the ceremony of communion. He's in the garden, and he's on his knees, and he says to his Father, I don't want this cup. If possible, please let this cup pass from me, because he knows the cross is coming. And yet the very next thing he says, not my will, but yours be done. This is what we're talking about. This is abandoning outcomes. It's exactly how Jesus lived. I don't want to do that, but I'm putting to death what I want. And I'm saying, whatever you want, that's what will be done. That's what I want. That's the goal. It's to be like Jesus in all of this. So then what I did is I thought, because I didn't know any of this back in that time when I was dealing with that boss that I just described. And I thought, I wonder how I should have responded if I would have known any of this. What would a Christian who really is serious about living with Jesus as the king of their life, how would they have responded? How should I have responded? And I didn't even know how to type up a sample prayer. So I went to AI, and I typed in AI, hey, here's what I'm doing. Help me. What should I have actually said? Because I didn't even know how to begin. That's why you have a second insert. On the second insert in your program, turn it over, and you've got a prayer. And I want you to grab the prayer and grab a pen, and I want you to underline every time there is a communication of trusting God in this prayer. Because I was just blown away by this. So, Father, you see my desire. I wanted this opportunity so much. I feel disappointed, hurt, and unseen. Right now, I surrender my grip on how I thought this should go. I release my boss, the promises, and the position to you. You are my provider, not her. You open and close doors according to your wisdom, not my timeline. Help me to trust that you're still writing a good story, even when this part feels unfair. I die to my need to understand, and I choose instead to rest in your care. Heal my heart so that bitterness doesn't take root. Help me to forgive freely and keep my heart soft and teachable. I don't have to make this right. You already will. Teach me to wait with open hands and a quiet spirit, believing that nothing withheld by man can cancel what you intend for me. When I read that, I'm like, well, that's about 99.9% sure that's what I should have said. But you can talk to my wife about what I actually said. Because it was mostly a lot of bitterness and complaining and anger and frustration and me trying to get what I wanted without trusting God and dying to the outcomes. I don't know how this is landing with you. I know that for me to be the kind of man that lives with God in his kingdom on earth, this is it. This is where I have to go. So then, like I said, I didn't read any of these steps in a book. I just kind of learned them over the last 7 months and wrote them out on a sheet of paper. And then I started asking myself questions, because is it easy to respond with difficult circumstances with faith? Not for me. I respond with control and anger and frustration. So then I started asking myself 3 questions every time. What would be possible if God was completely in charge of this situation? That's the idea. What would be possible if God was completely in charge of this situation? So in your life today, you always have these two competing forces. You have fear and faith. With every difficult circumstance that you can think of, everything that's caused you anxiety or worry or frustration, you have these two competing forces going on inside of you right now. Fear is helping you imagine what could go wrong. And one of them, by the way, is in control. One of them is in control. Faith helps you imagine what could go right. Fear does worst case scenario. Faith does best case scenario. Now, if you don't know this, your brain has a negativity bias. Did you know that? Your brain will go negative unless you intentionally make it go positive. So I started asking this question as I would list situations over the last, especially 2 months. What am I encountering? What's going wrong? I'm feeling this emotion. What desires attached to it? I'm going to die to that desire, but I'm going to turn it into faith. So I started asking myself questions. In this situation, look on the back of your notes. Look at what you wrote in that first box. Would that situation be hard for the King of the universe to take care of? No. I don't care what you put down. Would it be difficult for him to fix that? Could he win the battle that you are fighting? And all of these questions started making me think faith, not fear, because Jesus said with God, all things are possible. And he wants us to believe that all things are possible. So then I asked another question. What if I didn't have to carry this, fix this, or prove anything? What if I didn't have to carry this? What if I didn't have to fix it? Think about that one. What if Jesus didn't give you, or you're not in the middle of this problem because Jesus wants you to run around like a chicken with your head cut off trying to fix it? He never wanted you to fix it. He wanted you to trust him so he could fix it and you could learn to have more personal interactions with him. What if that's what's going on? So this just, again, I don't know where it came from. I just wrote it, and then I know this is true. Self-trust is the greatest enemy to the life of Christ in me. Some of you know that's true. Some of you don't know that's true. In the book of Colossians, he says that you, through faith in Jesus, get united with Jesus Christ. Jesus said that he and his Father come and make his home inside of you. He is powerful. And he wants to be doing more in your life. The problem is when problems come up, what I do is I slap his hand away and just say, I'll fix this, I'll take care of it myself. So I'll never forget the day I really became aware of how big a problem this was. It was years ago. It was probably my 30s. I was at a job that was, at the time, overwhelming. And I had worked a zillion hours that week because that was my solve to everything. Work 7 days a week, as long as it takes to get everything done. And I was driving out of the parking lot, looking at the building, and I felt this tremendous sense of pressure and overwhelming feeling of burnout. And all of a sudden, I became very aware of what I was doing. I was carrying all the problems myself. Some of you, that describes your very life today. Pressure, overwhelmed, you're carrying, because it's what you do. You fix. But it is not what Jesus offered. Look at what Jesus' promise is. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and what will you find? Rest. Is that what you have today? While you're sitting here, is your soul at rest? Or are you feeling anxious and overwhelmed and burdened and heavy? All of that is a sign, by the way, that you have some steps to take. Because you're trying to carry what he is saying. What if you don't have to carry it? This is the question that really gets me. What if I didn't have to carry this and fix it or prove it? What if I could put it in the hands of God and watch what he would do? And then I said, a third question, what can I really rest in or trust his competence with this problem? Because you're not just throwing a prayer out into the void, you are entrusting this situation to a competent God. And I wrote down 4 things on my little sheet. God is loving, strong, wise, and fully present with me. And I started praying through those every time I was scared. The fully present one is the one that really hits me the most. Are you all familiar with the story in Mark chapter 4 of Jesus in the boat? So one time Jesus had been teaching all day. He was exhausted. He got in a boat with his disciples. They were crossing the sea, and Jesus was so tired he fell asleep in the back. He said he had his head on a cushion. He was asleep, and the disciples were in the middle of this enormous storm, and the waves were coming over the side. And they were, many of them sailors, so they knew that they were in big trouble because nothing they were doing was working. And then Jesus is just sleeping. And so finally, in fear, they wake him up. And they're like, they literally say, "Don't you care if we drown?" So, fear or faith? Best case scenario or worst case scenario, right? Fear has taken over in a situation. Now, were they actually in danger of drowning with Jesus in the boat? Of course not, because what happens next is incredible. He stands up, and with just a few words, the storm dies, because being God, nothing resists his word, nothing. He is the ultimate storm killer. And then he's like, "Why were you afraid? Why didn't you trust me? Do you have such little faith?" And again, those are the two things always in contrast. When I read the story, I want you to think about this. If you had been one of those disciples in the boat, would you have had fear or faith? Would you have been afraid, or would you have been confident? It's okay, we got Jesus in the boat. I would like to think that I would have been the second one, knowing who Jesus is now and knowing this. I'd like to think that. Probably not, just based on my whole life. Probably not, probably fear. But if we would have been, if we would have understood who Jesus was, they had no reason to be afraid at all. But here's what you have to understand. Through faith in Jesus, Jesus isn't in a boat. He's in you. The same God who kills storms is now residing inside of you. He's the ultimate storm killer. What storm did you put down in that first box that he can't take down? He's present with you. And so by thinking about these things, they make me think bigger thoughts about God and build my faith so that I can do this: surrender and anticipate. As if I wasn't convicted enough over the last few months. Then I read this. Look at this. Surrender is incomplete unless it's coupled with anticipation, the expectation that God will act. So, does that describe you? When I read that, I was so convicted because one of the books that we give away, I talk about all the time, on the back counter is the biography of George Mueller. If you don't have a copy, take one. We love to give this book away. A couple of years ago, I was reading through it really slowly. And I read something. George Mueller cared for 10,000 orphans in his lifetime without any money, just trusting God with everything. And God always came through for him. In his biography, he wrote this. He said, "Work as if everything depended on your diligence and trust in the blessing of the Lord to bring success." Now, the only part of that sentence that I really like is the first part. I love that part. Work as if everything depended on you. Yes. Let's just stop there, George, because now I'm all in on this one. Work as if everything depended on me. Well, that's what I believe. That's how I've lived. Look at my life. That's what I've done, to the point of burning out and making a mess. But then he goes on to say, but you need to trust the blessing of the Lord to bring success. And then he says this, look, the blessing of the Lord, however, should not merely be sought in prayer, it should also be expected. So my two questions are, do you actually seek God's blessing when you're praying about the things that you are dealing with? But bigger, do you actually expect it? Do you expect God to bless you in the situation that you're in today? The interesting thing is, before March 20th, before I started all this, I've had a habit of getting up early and reading my Bible and praying for years and years and years. And I have a section in my prayer notebook where I have things that I'm praying about, specific things I'm asking for. The number one thing I would skip before March 20th was always that section. I wouldn't ask. I seldom asked because I didn't think much was going to happen anyway. This is why. I mean, you can do some own self-evaluation. Do you pray And do you pray with any expectation? So many of you don't pray because you don't think anything's going to happen anyway. Because if you actually expected the activity of God, you would pray. So many of you are in the same boat that I was in. And then I learned all of this and what he's offering us. So I put on your notes at the bottom a little prayer you can pray. It's actually in the back of the notes. This one is, Father, today I'll make plans, work hard, love well, but I will not demand results. I give the outcomes of this day to you, and I trust that being with you and under your rule is better than anything I might gain or lose today. That's what I think abandonment sounds like. And that's when you get to really participate with God in this world. And if you want that, full participation with him, then this is where you have to go. Here's why this was a tough message to write. I think that what God wanted in my life, and I look back now, I have regret, I don't like how I acted during that time with that boss, but I look back now to really make sure I embed the learnings. Because I think what God wanted me to do all those years ago was right here on those notes. He wanted me to say, yep, this is really bothering me emotionally. And then he wanted me to name what I wanted, and then he wanted me to die to the outcome. To trust him so much that even though I was getting the exact opposite outcome of everything I wanted, that I trusted him so much that I was willing to say, I die to the outcome. I die to what I want in this situation. I want this advancement, I'll let it go. I want to have this kind of work relationship with her, I'll let it go. I want her to treat me this way, I let that go. I die to all of these outcomes because I just trust you so much. And then reinforce my faith with those questions and look for and anticipate. But the reality is none of that happened. I became bitter and angry and frustrated, and I tried to control all the outcomes myself. And then many of you know the rest of the story, because years later, God, in his grace, took me from that job and put me in the job that I've been in for over a year and a half now. And it is night and day difference. I love what I do. I love who I work with. I love what I get to do. Everything is so much better here than where it was. And the whole time, he was just saying, would you trust me a little bit? I kind of know what I'm doing. I'll bring you where you need to go if you'll just trust me a little bit. And maybe God might be saying that to some of you today. So a couple of questions as we finish. Do you understand what God is truly offering you? Have you begun to think that Christianity is just about a church service or a religious ceremony that you have to participate in? He's offering himself to partner with you in this world so you get to see the activity of God in your life. Is that what you have? How easy is it for you to abandon all outcomes to God? I mean, you're only going to do that if you trust him. What situation could you begin to abandon to him today? You could just say, I'm picking one. That's what I really want you to do. Pick one. Like me, you probably have more than one, but pick one. And walk through these steps. And every time it comes back, you go back to that anticipation. Hey, you know what? I've given this to you, God. I can't wait to see what you're going to do because I'm abandoning the outcome of this to you. Okay? Just pick one. And then build anticipation by praying that way. Let me have you bow your heads. You know, there's two things that we always think about at the end of every message. The first one is, this sounds for some of you like this is a big deal, like it is for me. Some of you are just as activistic. You are outcome focused. You're results focused. You drive things forward. Some of you know what it's like to be burned out, to feel overwhelmed with stress, to feel like you are carrying a heavy load because it's really about your will. And the only way out of that is to step into the life that Jesus is offering you through surrender and then abandonment. Abandoning all outcomes to God. So for those of you who are at that point, I pray that today would be a day where you begin to make this conscious decision that you're going to start releasing outcomes to him. And just watch what he does. The truth is he can do more than you can even imagine. I've been surprised multiple times in the last 7 months by what he does when I release outcomes to him. So maybe for some of you, this is the day to start making that decision. For others of you, you don't know what you believe about this Jesus, and here we are, we're talking about him in a very personal way. And that's what we believe, that you can actually get to know him. And when Jesus said that he will come and make his home inside of you, he wasn't just making stuff up, he meant it. That he wants to come and live inside of you, to be present with you in everything you go through, but you have to open that door. We've already talked today about the fact that we are not perfect. We have fallen short of the standard that God has set, and that's why Jesus came and gave his life on a cross, so that we could be completely forgiven. And if you want this gift of life with Jesus, then you just have to ask for it. And you can say something like this in your heart. You can say, Jesus, I ask you to forgive me. I know that I've fallen short, and I need you in my life. So please forgive me. Come take up your home inside of me today. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this service today. We hope as a church and pray that this was something that really helps connect you deeper to Jesus. That's what we're all about as a church. If you need to communicate with us, if you go online to penuelchurchlife.com, in the upper right-hand corner is a box that says, I said yes to Jesus. It also says, please pray for me. Just click on that, and it'll take you to a place where you can communicate with us as a church. So if you ever want any of the resources we mentioned in a service, go there and let us know. We'll gladly send them to you. Or if you made a decision to say yes to Jesus or you have a prayer request, just let us know. And we're always glad to hear from the people who are watching online. And if we can continue to help you grow in your faith in any way, then we want to do that. So again, thank you. And our prayer is that you continue to grow and connect and find the true life that Jesus Christ is offering.